Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal Shalom's Matan Torah with commentary by Rabbi Avraham Mordechai Gottlieb. We're going to be starting a new essay today, the one that comes after A Time to Act. It is called Revealing a Handbreadth and Concealing Two. We previewed it in the last lesson by reading the first section, and we'll jump into it. Before we jump, our last essay, A Time to Act, was a summary of the reason the Baal Shalom began to write his holy works with the intention to disseminate Kabbalah and the inner matters of the Torah to the masses in order to expedite the redemption process by means of combating the inauthenticity that was rampant in his generation and only continues to grow, unfortunately, to this day due to the technology and ease of printing books and spreading information or misinformation for that matter. I'm just going to pull up the live stream in case we have any viewers who'd like to ask questions in the midst of the lesson. Also, good volume check. Great. The Baal Shalom begins. We're on page 38 of Giving. A familiar saying of great and renowned people as they are about to reveal something deep is, quote, "Behold, I am revealing a handbreadth and concealing two." The Rebbe Shlita says on the spot, the original source for the saying deals with modesty in marital relations, from Nedarim 20b and Nachmanides in Igret HaKodesh. However, the expression has come to be used generally to say that when revealing something, you should hide more than you reveal. He continues, in general, our ancestors were extremely careful never to utter or write an unnecessary word, as our sages instructed us in Megillah 18a and the introduction to the Zohar with the commentary of the Sulam, quote, a word for a selah. A selah is a coin. So a word for a coin, silence for two. This means that if you have something valuable to say that has a certain worth, a coin, refraining from saying it is worth twice as much. This is directed against those who spout forth superfluous words lacking content or practical use, and only do so for the audience's pleasure in their literary quality. Reminds me of myself and my vocabulary. This manner of speaking was strictly forbidden in the opinions of our ancestors, as is obvious by examining their words, and as I shall prove in the essays that follow. We must therefore carefully consider this oft-repeated maxim. On the comment of, this is directed against those who spout forth superfluous words, lacking content or practical use, and only do so for the audience's pleasure in their literary quality. The Rabbi Shlita says, quite a long comment. He begins at the bottom of page 38, comment number 12. This means that if you have something valuable to say that has a certain worth, for example, a coin, refraining from saying it is worth twice as much. However, this needs to be understood. If you have something valuable to say, why not tell it to another person? A. The idea is apparently based on Proverbs 23:23, quote, buy truth and don't sell. In Kokt, the Hasidic dynasty funded by Rabbi Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, they interpreted this, quote, anytime that you buy, don't start to sell. That is, if you have not yet acquired knowledge or a character that will perfect your soul in accordance with the purpose of your coming to this world, you do not have permission and justification to start to cultivate others or give them spiritual healing. According to this, it follows that if you wish to acquire knowledge, you must be careful to do so from a rabbi who has already perfected all the aspects of his soul. And this is called a true rabbi. As we mentioned in the prior essay, Time to Act, the definition of a true rabbi, a quality sage, has generally two parameters: that they should be akin to the angels. Angels are aspects of our consciousness, aspects of our spirituality that are programmed like an animal, meaning they're just fulfilling their function, and they're fulfilling it perfectly, meaning for the sake of heaven. No ego involved. So a true rabbi is one who is operating based on the quality of giving and doesn't want to receive for himself alone. Rather, he wants to serve others. And two, that he can explain lofty matters, even simply, to simple individuals or unlearned individuals, for example, but generally that he can explain simple concepts and inspire others to go in the way of the service of the Creator. The Rebbe Shita continues, however, if we follow this principle, the principle being only to choose and connect to a true rabbi that has completed his soul, the world could not continue to exist. For no one today would ever consider himself as authorized and fit to teach. Therefore, at this time, one should seek a rabbi that at least attempts to reach the truth, even if he has not attained perfection. In other words, when one seeks a guide, it is wrong to take whoever comes along or to rely on some external indication or public opinion. Rather, one is to rely only on this attribute, that the rabbi attempts to perfect his soul. In contrast to external indication or public opinion, let's say someone is connecting to their roots and has joined some type of organization or their local shul, Beit Knesset, Beit Midrash, they go to yeshiva. Just because there's leaders there, rabbis there, doesn't necessarily mean that they're equipped to guide one in their spiritual work. Perhaps guide one into choosing the next best community, the next best book or place to learn, maybe. It's different parameters. But as we mentioned in the prior essay, which if you haven't listened to or read, I would recommend. So in terms of the rabbi needing to perfect his soul, and the fact that we need to choose someone who is at least attempting to perfect it, meaning I want to choose someone if I need help with my head, a head specialist. I will not go to a foot specialist if I have a problem with my head. So too, there might be a lot of leaders, or rabbis, teachers, who are specialists in different aspects of the Torah, but chances are they don't necessarily have a strong grasp on these inner matters because it's not common and it's not taught in the education systems in an orderly way. So there's much less than more. It's a minuscule number of those connected to such concepts and learning on a regular basis. So just needing to compartmentalize and know who to connect to and when. B, again, these are the points of, if you have something valuable to say, why not tell it to another person? So the second reason is, however, the verse in Proverbs can be interpreted alternatively according to the principle used by Bala Sulam, that wherever scripture writes don't or it is forbidden, the intended meaning is that it is impossible. Therefore, the interpretation of buy truth and don't sell is that it is impossible to sell the truth. For the truth is not merchandisable, but belongs only to a special breed of persons who have a spiritual inclination to truth. There will be no use in any effort to impart truth to someone who is not sufficiently spiritually developed to receive it. One needs to have the vessels for it. It's not so simple to put it just anywhere, as some people who don't want it perhaps will be actually averted from the information or the wisdom. For this reason, there's the notion of we do not teach Torah to women and children, meaning women and children are inside of us. All aspects of the entire world is inside of us. As it says in the Gemara, our sages tell us that Adam, so Olam Katan, man is a small world. World meaning universe, not just a planet. Really, the Olam, everything. Meaning every aspect of creation, from inanimate to plant to animal to speaking and to godly, is programmed within the innermost point of the person that we call a soul, the true self, the true identity, in contrast to the ego. Therefore, everyone has within them male and female energies, aspects of male, aspects of female, and individuals have certain energies more dominant than others that may be rooted in whatever gender they were born as. The point of we don't teach Torah to women and children, in the deep definition, is that Torah is from the language of hora'ah. It's a guidance, it's a way, it's a path of going. And it's also related to the word of or, Torah, or, meaning light. The Torah is a guiding light because the Torah was only given to the nation of Israel in order to purify them, in order to refine them. To refine them of what? Their oviut, their coarseness. What is the coarseness? Their egoism. What is this egoism called? The Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, the will to receive for oneself alone, the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. Many different names for it depending on the context of our holy works. In the language of the Baal Sulam, it is the will to receive. Quite simply. More specifically, the will to receive for oneself alone. Because the will to receive by itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It's neutral. It's the will to receive. I need to receive food and drink and sleep as well. But to receive for oneself alone, as opposed to receiving in order to give, of course, that is something that we are said to be disconnected from the Creator if we involve ourselves with, which is why in holy works, Kabbalah, for example, if someone is involved in receiving for themselves alone, it's called asur, it's forbidden. What do you mean it's forbidden? I do it all the time. But the definition here is that forbidden or don't means impossible, meaning it's not conducive to one's spiritual growth. So too, my receiving for oneself alone, considering it separates me from the path of a constant effort to refine myself and come closer towards the Creator, it's not conducive to that goal. So it's called asur, it's called forbidden. It's time and place. Of course, there's things that are totally forbidden in asur, as per the Torah, as there's two general aspects of do good and shy away from bad. But we digress slightly. Women and children are meant to represent different aspects of our will to receive for ourselves alone. A woman, an isha, because biologically, in terms of reproduction, a woman is on the receiving end. She receives the potential life and cultivates it and actualizes it. So to the woman within us is representing that aspect of receiving. And this context, receiving for ourselves alone. A child prioritizes nonsensical things, not important things. For example, there could be an amazing class given by a very important rabbi, the greatest of the generation, for example. And the child knows that the class is being given, but instead of being in the class and listening, they're outside playing ball with their friends. Or they're in the corner, not paying attention, eating candy, chocolate. and the like. The priority is for things that are not conducive to our spiritual growth. That's the notion of a child. And that notion is within all of us. We have all of these aspects within us. So to say that we don't teach Torah to women and children is saying don't, meaning it's not conducive, meaning it won't do anything. The Torah is meant to refine us, and you can't refine that which is disconnected in quality to wanting to be refined, because the woman is an aspect of receiving for oneself alone, and the child could care less. This is not to be understood literally. These are just words that are describing principles. The case is often that women, in truth, are much more giving than men and sacrifice themselves much more often and more consistently than men. So again, this is not black and white. Don't teach Torah to literal women and children. We have to understand these in an inner way, as explained. And C, one must be silent so as not to deliver the soul of the Torah to those who peer at chimneys and to those who are ruled by their cravings, as Baal Salam stated in the previous essay. Specifically, people who peer at chimneys are those who merely gaze at the heights of wisdom, but do not attempt to apply it to their lives. Meaning they may be learning for the learning itself. They're interested in the wisdom. They're interested in knowing how many sefirot and worlds there are and how the Creator created everything. But that's not the point. It's not the purpose of our learning, nor Torah and mitzvot. Purpose is to refine ourselves. So if someone doesn't at least have the desire to refine themselves, because even just desiring to refine yourself is already a very high level. So even desiring to desire that is something to be said. And the list goes on. Desiring to desire to be refined. All lofty relative to the world that is not interested in such ideas. There's plenty of self-work and self-help concepts and books out there, but they're all with the tools and consciousness of developing oneself, not towards altruism, but for the sake of developing oneself. It's from the side of the ego. On the last comment of the paragraph of Baal Sulam, being, I shall prove in the essays that follow, we must therefore carefully consider this oft repeated maxim, being that the manner of speaking is strictly forbidden in the opinion of our ancestors, of words were not spoken superfluously, but were exacting in nature. The Rebbe Shita says, since our ancestors were so careful not to speak superfluous words, certainly there is deep meaning to the words, and their maxim, quote, revealing a handbreadth and concealing two. And it is to this that Baal Sulam alludes. For if they were not precise in their words, and wanted only to declare the general idea that a certain portion should be revealed and a certain portion concealed, then they could have said, quote, revealing 2 handbreadths and concealing 4 handbreadths, or something to this effect. Thus, on the contrary, in these exact words is certainly hidden some deep meaning. Certainly, the contrast of 1 and 2 in itself is alluding to something very deep, hence not being 2 and 4, 4 and 8, and the like. Which is amazing because even just mentioning that there is certainly something hidden is already touching on the aspect of the revealing 1 and concealing 2. I find it to be a very meta perush, a very meta comment from the Rebbe. Tov, that should be good for today. When we continue, we'll be getting into the 3 types of concealment in wisdom. To preview, there are 3 categories of secrets to the Torah, and each category has its own reason for concealment. They are called by these names: A, the unnecessary; B, the impossible; and C, a divine secret for those in awe of God. Even the smallest detail of this wisdom can be divided into these three categories, and I will explain each one in turn. Looking forward to continuing and explaining and clarifying these important ideas and getting clarification on what it means to have permission from heaven to reveal such matters. As the Baal Sulam was unique in the fact that he revealed such matters in his generation, and even today, the Torah and what it stands for is in great contrast to the mainstream that shies away even strongly from such concepts when they're so foundational and so necessary, as stated throughout our lessons up until now. Thank you again for joining. Till next time, all the best.